Humans enjoy hot steam? Alien girl's surprised reaction in a human sauna. The Galactic Council space station orbited a vibrant blue star, a shimmering beacon of diplomacy amidst the cosmos. Hundreds of alien species had gathered for the momentous summit, their starships docked in a dazzling array of shapes and sizes. The air hummed with a cacophony of languages, and the occasional burst of laughter, a symphony of interstellar camaraderie. Dane Ryder, a chiseled human diplomat with tousled brown hair and piercing blue eyes, strode confidently through the station's gleaming corridors. His muscular frame filled out his tailored suit, drawing admiring glances from various alien delegates. He moved with purpose, his strides long and sure, a man on a mission. As Dane rounded a corner, he collided with a striking humanoid woman with cerulean skin and flowing azure hair. Datapads clattered to the floor, skittering across the polished metal like startled critters. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there," Dane apologized, bending to help retrieve the scattered devices. His hands brushed against hers, sending a jolt of electricity up his arm. No, the fault is mine," the woman replied in a melodic voice, her sapphire eyes meeting his. "I am Kylara of the Solarian delegation. I'm afraid I was rather distracted." She smiled ruefully, a faint purple blush coloring her cheeks. Dane flashed a disarming smile, his heart skipping a beat at the sight of her exotic beauty. "Pleased to meet you, Kylara. I'm Dane, representing Earth." As they stood, hands brushing as he returned her datapads, he couldn't help but appreciate her lithe curves and the way her hair shimmered under the station's artificial light. "Ah, you're human," Kylara remarked, head tilting curiously. Her eyes sparkled with intrigue, as if he were a particularly fascinating specimen. "I must admit, I find your species quite fascinating. There's still so much we Solarians don't know about Earth culture." "Well, I'd be happy to enlighten you," Dane offered with a playful wink. His voice dropped an octave, taking on a conspiratorial tone. "Perhaps we could discuss it further? I was just about to head to the station's sauna to unwind after that intense council session." Kylara's brow furrowed, a cute little crinkle forming between her eyes. "Sauna? I'm not familiar with this term. What is the purpose of this sauna?" Dane chuckled, a rich, warm sound that seemed to fill the corridor. "It's a small room where we humans go to relax. It's filled with hot steam, which we find quite therapeutic and soothing." The Solarian diplomat looked intrigued, if a bit perplexed. "You willingly subject your bodies to high temperatures and moisture? How peculiar. Our kind prefers a dry, moderate climate." "Trust me, it's incredibly rejuvenating," Dane assured her with a grin. He leaned in closer, his breath ghosting across her cheek. "Tell you what, why don't you join me? I can show you what the sauna experience is all about. Consider it an ambassadorial cultural exchange." Kylara hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his. Dane could practically see the gears turning in her head, weighing the propriety of such an invitation. But there was a spark of mischief there too, a hint of rebellion against the stifling formality of diplomacy. "You know what? I accept your invitation, Dane Ryder of Earth," she said at last, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Lead the way to this intriguing sauna of yours." As they set off together through the station, Dane found himself captivated by Kylara's inquisitive nature and quick wit. She peppered him with questions about human customs, her eyes wide with wonder as he described the lush forests and sprawling cities of Earth. In turn, she regaled him with tales of her own homeworld, a planet of shimmering crystal spires and vast lavender seas. They were so engrossed in their conversation that they almost walked right past the sauna entrance. Dane caught himself at the last moment, his hand darting out to catch Kylara's elbow. "Here we are," he said, gesturing to the frosted glass door. "Ready to experience a little slice of Earth culture?" Kylara grinned, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Lead on, Ambassador. I'm ready for whatever surprises you have in store." As they stepped into the sauna, the humid air enveloped them like a warm embrace. Kylara gasped, her skin flushing a deeper shade of blue as the heat washed over her. "Oh my," she breathed, fanning herself with a slender hand. "This is intense," Dane chuckled, settling onto one of the wooden benches. "Give it a moment. Let your body adjust. Trust me, it's worth it." Kylara sat beside him, close enough that their thighs brushed. Dane felt a thrill run through him at the contact, his skin tingling where it met hers. As the steam curled around them, he found himself getting lost in her eyes, twin pools of sapphire that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing as easily as the sweat down their skin. Dane found himself opening up to Xaria in a way he never had with anyone before, sharing his hopes and dreams, his fears and doubts. In turn, she bared her own soul, speaking of the pressures of her position, the weight of her people's expectations. As the heat seeped into their bones, Dane felt the barriers between them melting away. Here, in this moment, they weren't just diplomats from different worlds. They were two souls, connected by a bond that transcended species and culture. When at last they emerged, skin flushed and spirits rejuvenated, Dane knew something had shifted between them. A connection had been forged, as strong and unbreakable as the hull of the station itself. "That was incredible," Xaria murmured, her hand lingering on his arm. "I had no idea humans had such fascinating traditions." Dane grinned, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Stick with me, Xaria. I'll show you wonders you never even dreamed of." Her eyes sparkled with promise, her smile turning coy. "I'll hold you to that, Dane Rider, and perhaps, in turn, I can introduce you to some Solarian customs." As they parted ways, Dane couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that their chance encounter had set something in motion, something that would change the course of both their lives. Little did he know, the wheels of fate were already turning, that the connection they'd forged in the heat of the sauna would soon be tested by forces beyond their control. But whatever challenges lay ahead, Dane knew one thing for certain. With Xaria by his side, he was ready to face anything the galaxy could throw at them. In the days following their steamy encounter in the sauna, Dane found himself increasingly captivated by Xaria's vibrant curiosity and zest for life. The Solarian diplomat seemed determined to unravel the mysteries of human culture, peppering him with questions about everything from Earth's cuisine to its courtship rituals. "So let me get this straight," Xaria said, her brow furrowed in concentration as they strolled through the station's lush arboretum. "When a human finds someone attractive, they invite them to ingest fermented plant matter and engage in rhythmic body movements to auditory stimuli?" Dane chuckled, his eyes sparkling with amusement. "We call it grabbing a drink and dancing, but yeah, that's the gist of it." Xaria shook her head, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Humans are so delightfully bizarre. On Cellar, we express romantic interests through the exchange of intricate crystal sculptures. Each facet represents a different aspect of our admiration." "Well, maybe I should start sculpting then," Dane teased, his hand brushing against hers as they walked. The contact sent a shiver down his spine, a delicious warmth blooming in his chest. Xaria glanced at him, her sapphire eyes glinting with mischief. "Or perhaps I should learn more about these drinks and dancing, for purely anthropological purposes, of course." Dane grinned, his heart skipping a beat at the unspoken promise in her words. "Of course, and as your dedicated cultural attaché, it would be my honor to guide you through the intricacies of human social rituals." As they continued their stroll, Dane found himself regaling Xaria with tales of Earth's natural wonders. The majestic peaks of the Himalayas, the prismatic spray of Iguazu Falls, the serene beauty of a sunrise over the Serengeti. Her eyes widened with each description, her face alight with wonder and longing. "Your world sounds like a paradise," she murmured, her fingers intertwining with his. "I hope to see it for myself someday." Dane squeezed her hand, a sudden fierce protectiveness surging through him. "I'll make sure of it, Xaria, I promise." Their moment was interrupted by a sudden commotion at the far end of the arboretum. A group of Bragaxian diplomats were gesticulating wildly, their voices raised in agitation. Dane frowned. Yeah, his instincts telling him something was amiss. "Wait here," he murmured to Xaria, his hand slipping from hers as he moved to investigate. As he approached the Bragaxians, their words became clearer. "Can't believe the audacity of those humans," one of them was saying, his purple skin flushed with anger. "Thinking they can just monopolize the sauna like that?" Dane's frown deepened, a sense of unease settling in his gut. He thought the sauna was open to all species, a place of relaxation and cultural exchange, but it seemed some on the station saw it differently. He was just about to interject when a familiar voice cut through the din. "Ambassador Ryder!" It was Xaria, her eyes wide with excitement as she hurried towards him. I just had the most wonderful idea. Dane turned to her, his brow raised in question. Oh, a cultural exchange program, she exclaimed, her hands clasped together in enthusiasm. Imagine it, humans and Solarians learning about each other's worlds, sharing their traditions and perspectives. The sauna could be just the beginning. Despite the tension still crackling in the air, Dane found himself grinning at her infectious excitement. That's brilliant, Kylara, a way to foster understanding and cooperation between our species. She beamed at him, her smile brighter than a supernova. Exactly, but her expression faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. I'll need your help to make it happen, navigating the bureaucratic channels, convincing my superiors of the value. Dane reached out, his fingers grazing her cheek in a tender caress. I'm with you every step of the way, Kylara. Together we'll make this vision a reality. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment. When she opened them again, they were filled with a fierce determination. Then let's get started, Ambassador. We have a galaxy to change. As they set off together, their steps in perfect sync, Dane couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a diplomatic initiative. It was a chance to build something beautiful with Kylara, to forge a bond that transcended the boundaries of their worlds. But even as his heart soared with possibility, a nagging voice whispered in the back of his mind. The Brogaxian's anger, the undercurrents of tension on the station, something told him their path forward wouldn't be smooth sailing. He glanced at Kylara, her face alight with hope and determination, and felt a surge of resolve. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them head-on. For her, for their budding connection, he would move heaven and earth. With a smile, he took her hand in his and stepped forward into the unknown, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Little did Dane know the future had some steamy surprises in store for them. As Dane and Kylara worked tirelessly on their cultural exchange proposal, stolen moments in the sauna became their secret refuge. Away from prying eyes and diplomatic pressures, they could simply be themselves. Two souls drawn together by an inexplicable bond. One evening as they sat side by side in the steam-filled room, Kylara turned to him with a mischievous glint in her eye. You know, I've been doing some research on human mating customs. Dane nearly choked on his water, his eyes widening in surprise. Oh, and what have you learned? She leaned in close, her breath ghosting across his ear. That humans express desire through physical touch, a brush of the hand, a caress of the cheek, each gesture laden with unspoken meaning. Dane swallowed hard, his pulse quickening at her proximity. And what about Solarians? How do your people express desire? Kylara smiled, slow and enigmatic. Through the sharing of our innermost thoughts and feelings, a melding of minds, a communion of souls. She placed her hand on his chest, her fingers splaying over his pounding heart. I find myself wondering, Dane, what would it be like to experience desire the human way? To feel your touch on my skin, your lips on mine. Dane's breath caught in his throat, his body thrumming with a sudden, desperate want. Kylara, he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. Are you sure? I don't want to pressure you. She silenced him with a finger to his lips, her eyes smoldering with intensity. I've never been more sure of anything, Dane. I want this. I want you. With a groan, Dane surged forwards, capturing her lips in a searing kiss. Kylara melted into him, her hands tangling in his hair as she pulled him closer. Their bodies aligned, skin slick with sweat and steam, as they lost themselves in the heat of the moment. Dane's hands roamed her curves, marveling at the silken softness of her skin. Kylara gasped and arched into his touch, her nails raking down his back in delicious friction. They moved together, a dance of passion and desire, until the world fell away and there was nothing but the two of them, joined in blissful union. Afterward, as they lay entwined on the sauna bench, Dane pressed a tender kiss to Kylara's forehead. That was incredible, she finished, her voice hazy with satisfaction. I had no idea the human way could be so intense. Dane chuckled, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. And I can't wait to experience the Solarian way. To know your mind, your heart. Kylara smiled, her eyes soft with affection. Soon, my love. Very soon. They drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, their hearts beating in perfect sync. But even in the blissful aftermath of their lovemaking, Dane couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were far from over. For now, though, he was content to lose himself in the warmth of Kalara's embrace, to savor this moment of perfect connection. Come what may, they would face it together, partners in every sense of the word. As Dane slipped into a contented slumber, he couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought them together. A chance collision, a steamy sauna, a daring diplomatic gambit, each step leading them inexorably to this moment. He knew their journey was far from over. The Bragaxians' resentment, the pressures of their positions, the vast gulfs of culture and space that separated their worlds, all of it loomed on the horizon, waiting to test their fledgling bond. But for now, in the cocoon of steam and satisfaction, none of it mattered. All that existed was the two of them, human and Solarian, diplomat and ambassador, man and woman. Two hearts, beating as one. And as Dane drifted off to sleep, he knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. Whatever the future held, he would fight for this. For her, for them, for the shimmering promise of what they could be. Together they would weather any storm. Together they would change the galaxy, one steamy encounter at a time. As their cultural exchange program gained momentum, Dane and Kalara found themselves thrust into the galactic spotlight. Their unlikely romance, born in the steam of the sauna, had become a symbol of hope and unity in a divided galaxy. But with the increased attention came increased scrutiny. Every glance, every touch, every stolen moment was analyzed and dissected by the voracious interstellar media. Pundits debated the propriety of their relationship, while gossip rags speculated wildly about their private lives. "I never wanted this," Kalara confessed one evening, as they huddled together in the privacy of Dane's quarters. "I just wanted to make a difference, to bring our peoples closer together." But now, Dane pulled her close, his arms a comforting shelter against the chaos outside. "I know, love, but we can't let them get to us. What we have, it's worth fighting for." Kalara sighed, her head resting on his shoulder. "I just wish we could have a moment to ourselves. No cameras, no reporters, no expectations. Just you and me." A slow smile spread across Dane's face, an idea forming in his mind. "Maybe we can. Meet me at the sauna tomorrow night after the last council session. I have a plan." The next evening, as the station's corridors emptied and the diplomats retired to their quarters, Dane and Kalara slipped away to their secret haven. The sauna welcomed them like an old friend, its steam a soothing balm against the stresses of the day. As they settled onto the bench, their bodies instinctively curling towards each other, Dane reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. "A little something I cooked up with the help of the station's engineer. It's a signal jammer designed to block all surveillance within a 10-foot radius." Kylara's eyes widened, a grin spreading across her face. "Dane, you brilliant man! So we're completely alone?" He nodded, his own smile mirroring hers. "Just you, me, and the steam." They laughed, the sound echoing off the sauna's wooden walls. For a moment, the weight of the galaxy lifted from their shoulders, and they were just two people in love, reveling in each other's company. But their respite was short-lived. Suddenly, the sauna's control panel beeped loudly, the lights flashing an angry red. The temperature began to climb, the steam thickening until it was almost impossible to see. "What's happening?" Kalara cried, her voice tinged with panic. Dane leapt to his feet, his mind racing. "Someone must have tampered with the controls. We need to get out of here." But when he pushed against the door, it wouldn't budge. They were trapped, the heat rising with every passing second. Kalara grabbed his hand, her skin slick with sweat. "Dane, if we don't make it out of here..." He silenced her with a fierce kiss, pouring all his love and determination into the press of his lips. "We will make it out, I promise you." Together they scoured the sauna, searching for any means of escape, but the walls were solid, the ventilation grates too small to climb through. With each passing minute, the air grew more stifling, their breathing more labored. Just as Dane felt the edges of his vision begin to blur, his hand brushed against a small, hidden panel in the wall. With a cry of triumph, he pried it open, revealing a tangle of wires and circuitry. "The override controls," he gasped, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar technology. "If I can just..." With a final desperate twist of a wire, the sauna's door slid open, cool air rushing in to embrace them. They stumbled out, gulping down lungfuls of blessed oxygen. As they clung to each other, their hearts pounding in sync, Dane couldn't help but laugh. "Well, that was a bit more excitement than I had planned for our evening." Kylara giggled, her face pressed against his chest. Just another day in the life of the galaxy's most talked-about couple. But even as they joked, Dane's mind was racing. The sauna malfunction was no accident. Someone had deliberately tried to harm them, to send a message. He tightened his arms around Kylara, a fierce protectiveness surging through him. Let them try. He would face down 1,000 dangers to keep her safe, to preserve the precious bond they had forged. Together, they made their way back to Kylara's quarters, the adrenaline of their near-death experience giving way to a bone-deep weariness. As they collapsed onto the bed, their limbs intertwined, Dane pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. "I love you, Kylara. No matter what happens, no matter what the galaxy throws at us, I will always fight for you. For us." She smiled, her eyes soft with adoration. "And I for you, my brave human. Together we can weather any storm." They drifted off to sleep, their dreams filled with visions of a future where their love had triumphed over all obstacles. A future where humans and Solarians stood side by side, united in common purpose. But even as they slept, the wheels of fate continued to turn. For their enemies were not so easily deterred, and the path ahead was fraught with peril. And on a distant planet, a summons was issued, a call that would test the strength of their bond like never before. The next morning, Kylara awoke to an urgent message from her homeworld. Her father, a high-ranking Solarian official, had fallen gravely ill. She was needed back on Stellar immediately, to be by his side and to assume his duties in his absence. "I have to go," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion as she clung to Dane's hand. "But I don't want to leave you, not now, not when we've come so far." Dane's heart clenched, 1,000 emotions warring within him. The thought of being separated from her, even for a moment, was almost too much to bear. But he knew, deep down, what he had to do. "Go," he said softly, his soul brushing away the tears that spilled down her cheeks. "Your family needs you. Your people need you. I would never stand in the way of that." Kylara's lip trembled, her eyes searching his. "And what about you? What about us?" He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I will be here, my love, waiting for you, working to make our dream a reality. And when you return, I will run into your arms and never let go," she finished, her voice fierce with promise. They kissed then, a desperate, passionate meeting of lips and tongues and hearts, a kiss that said everything they couldn't put into words, their love, their devotion, their unshakable belief in the future they were building together. And then all too soon, she was gone, her ship disappearing into the vast expanse of space. Dane stood at the observation deck, his hand pressed against the glass, until long after her vessel had vanished from sight. In the days that followed, Dane threw himself into his work with a renewed sense of purpose. He met with diplomats from a dozen worlds, lobbying tirelessly for the cultural exchange program he and Kylara had envisioned. He pored over reports and proposals, determined to iron out every last detail before she returned. But the nights were harder. He lay awake in his too-empty bed, his arms aching for the warmth of her body, his heart yearning for the sound of her laughter. In those moments, the doubts crept in, insidious whispers that plagued his sleepless mind. What if she didn't come back? What if the pull of her world, her people, proved stronger than the bond they had forged? What if their love, born in the heat of the sauna, couldn't survive the cold vastness of space? But always, just when the darkness threatened to overwhelm him, he would remember her words, her promise. "I will run into your arms and never let go." And the doubts would recede, banished by the sheer force of his belief in her, in them. And so he waited, his heart a compass pointing ever towards her. He waited through the long, lonely nights and the even longer diplomatic sessions. He waited as the station buzzed with rumor and speculation, as the media's interest in their story waxed and waned. He waited, his love for her a constant flame, a beacon guiding her home. And when at last her ship docked at the station once more, he was there, his heart in his throat and his eyes bright with unshed tears. He watched as she emerged from the airlock, her blue skin luminous under the station's artificial light. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, drinking in the sight of their beloved's face after so many days apart. And then with a cry of joy, Xaria launched herself into his arms, her lips finding his in a kiss that shook the very stars. "I'm home," she whispered against his mouth, her tears mingling with his own. "I'm home, my love." Dane held her close, his heart too full for words. For in that moment, he knew that no distance, no obstacle could ever truly separate them. Their love had been forged in the crucible of the sauna, tempered by the trials they had faced together. It was a love that would change the galaxy, one heart at a time. A love that would build bridges between worlds and bring hope to countless lives. A love that would last, unshakable and true, until the very end of the stars. Dane couldn't take it anymore. The long, lonely nights, the endless diplomatic meetings, the constant ache in his heart where Xaria should be. He needed to see her, to hold her, to reassure himself that their love was more than just a fleeting dream born in the steam of the sauna. And so, with a boldness born of desperation, he booked passage on the next ship to Cellar. He didn't tell anyone of his plans, not even his closest aides. This was something he had to do alone, a grand romantic gesture that would sweep Xaria off her feet and prove the depth of his devotion. As the ship descended through Cellar's atmosphere, Dane found himself pressing against the viewport, eager for his first glimpse of Xaria's homeworld. The planet was a vision of ethereal beauty, its surface a swirl of lavender and turquoise, dotted with glittering, crystalline cities that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. But as he disembarked and made his way through the spaceport, Dane quickly realized that he was woefully unprepared for the realities of Salarian culture. The signs were all in a flowing alien script that his translator couldn't quite decipher, and the customs officials regarded him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Purpose of visit?" one of them asked. His blue skin flushed a deeper shade in what Dane could only assume was the Salarian equivalent of a frown. "I'm here to see Xaria," Dane said, trying to project a confidence he didn't quite feel. "Xaria of the diplomatic corps?" The official's eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping at his console with a speed that made Dane dizzy. "I have no record of a Xaria requesting a human visitor, and you have no visa, no itinerary, no documentation." Dane's heart sank. In his haste to get to Cellar, he hadn't even considered the bureaucratic hurdles he might face. He opened his mouth to argue, to explain, but the official cut him off with a wave of his hand. "I'm sorry, sir, but I cannot allow you to enter Salarian space without proper authorization. You'll have to return to your ship and leave immediately." Dane's mind raced, desperate for a solution. He couldn't come this far, only to be turned away at the gate. He needed to see Xaria, to... Suddenly, a commotion erupted at the other end of the spaceport. A group of Salarians, dressed in flowing robes of shimmering silver, were making their way through the crowd, their faces alight with excitement. And at the center of the group, resplendent in a gown of deepest blue, "Xaria!" Dane cried, his heart leaping in his chest. She turned at the sound of his voice, her eyes widening in shock and delight. "Dane, what are you doing here?" He ran to her, heedless of the stares and murmurs of the crowd. In a moment, she was in his arms, her lips finding his in a kiss that made the stars themselves seem to spin. "I couldn't stay away," he murmured against her mouth. "I missed you too much." Xaria laughed, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Oh, Dane, you beautiful, impulsive man. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in?" As it turned out, quite a lot. Dane's unannounced arrival had caused a diplomatic incident, his lack of proper documentation a breach of Salarian protocol. He was taken into custody, his fate uncertain as the gears of bureaucracy ground slowly on. But Xaria never left his side. She argued fiercely on his behalf, calling in every favor and pulling every string until, at last, the charges were dropped and Dane was released into her custody. "I'm so sorry," he said, as they walked hand in hand through the crystalline streets of Xaria's city. "I never meant to cause you so much trouble. I needed to see you." Xaria squeezed his hand, her smile soft with understanding. "I know, my love. And truth be told, a part of me is thrilled by your grand romantic gesture. But Dane, you can't just go charging into situations without thinking, especially not on Cellar." Dane sighed, running his free hand through his hair. "I'm starting to realize that. It's just, everything is so different here. The customs, the language, the way people look at me. I feel like a fish out of water. Kylara laughed, the sound like the tinkling of wind chimes. Welcome to my world, love. That's how I felt every day on the station, trying to navigate human culture. She tugged him closer, her head resting on his shoulder as they walked. But we'll figure it out together. I'll be your guide to all things Solarian, just as you were mine to the wonders of the sauna. Dane grinned, pressing a kiss to her hair. Speaking of saunas, I don't suppose Cellar has anything like that? I could really use a good steam after the day I've had. Kylara's eyes sparkled with mischief. Oh, we have something even better. Just you wait. She led him to a large domed building on the outskirts of the city, its walls pulsing with a soft, inviting glow. Inside, Dane found himself in a vast open chamber, its floor covered in a thick, spongy moss that yielded beneath his feet. This is a Solarian relaxation chamber, Kylara explained, leading him to a small, secluded alcove. The moss emits a gentle, soothing vibration that helps to ease tension and calm the mind. She settled onto the moss, pulling Dane down beside her. As he lay back, he felt a strange, tingling sensation spread through his body, as if every cell were being gently massaged. He sighed in contentment, his eyes drifting closed as the stresses of the day melted away. This is amazing, he murmured, his hand finding Kylara's in the soft, pulsing darkness. I can see why your people love it so much. Kylara curled into his side, her head resting on his chest. It's not just the physical sensation, she said softly. It's the emotional connection, the sense of unity and harmony. When we come here, we open our minds to each other, sharing our thoughts and feelings in a way that transcends words. Dane's heart quickened, a sudden, intense longing filling him. Show me, he whispered. Please. Kylara's eyes met his, deep and luminous in the chamber's soft glow. Slowly, tenderly, she placed her hands on either side of his face, her fingers cool against his skin. Open your mind to me, Dane. Let me in. And he did. He felt her consciousness brush against his, a gentle, intimate caress that sent shivers down his spine. Suddenly, he could feel her emotions as if they were his own, her joy at his presence, her fear for her father's health, her deep, abiding love for him. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, a connection unlike anything he had ever known. Kylara, he breathed, his voice thick with wonder. I had no idea. She silenced him with a kiss, her lips soft and sweet against his. Now you do, my love. Now you understand. They lay there for hours, lost in each other's minds and hearts, the chamber's gentle vibrations a soothing counterpoint to the intensity of their connection. And when at last they emerged, blinking in the soft Solarian sunlight, Dane knew that something had changed between them, a bond forged that could never be broken. Hand in hand, they made their way back to the city, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. But as they approached Kylara's family home, a sudden commotion caught their attention. A crowd had gathered outside, their faces alight with excitement and joy. What's going on? Dane asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. Kylara's eyes widened, a smile spreading across her face. It's my father. He's awake. They pushed through the crowd, their hearts pounding in unison. And there, standing tall and proud at the center of the throng, was Kylara's father, his blue skin luminous with health and vitality. Father! Kylara cried, throwing herself into his arms. You're all right. The elder Solarian chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mirth. Of course I am, my dear. You didn't think a little thing like a coma could keep me down for long, did you? His gaze fell on Dane, and for a moment, the human felt a flicker of apprehension. But then the old man's face split into a wide, welcoming grin. And you must be the human who's stolen my daughter's heart. Dane, isn't it? Dane nodded, his throat suddenly dry. Yes, sir. It's an honor to meet you. Kylara's father clasped his hand, his grip strong and sure. The honor is mine, son. Anyone who makes my Kylara smile like that is more than welcome in our family. Kylara beamed, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Oh, father, I was so worried. The old man waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense, child. I'm as strong as a Solarian ox. And now that I'm back on my feet, I have an announcement to make. He turned to the crowd, his voice ringing out clear and strong. My fellow Solarians, I have seen the future. And that future is one of unity, of cooperation between our people and the humans. My daughter and her mate are living proof of the bonds that can be forged when we open our hearts and minds to each other. A murmur ran through the crowd, some faces alight with hope, others creased with doubt. Kylara's father held up a hand for silence. I know that some of you may have reservations, that the idea of a Solarian and a human together may seem strange, even unnatural. But I ask you to look beyond your preconceptions, to see the love and devotion that shines between these two. For in their union, I see the seeds of a brighter tomorrow, a future where our two peoples stand as one. He turned to Dane and Kylara, his eyes soft with affection. And so, my children, I give you my blessing. May your love be a beacon of hope for us all. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising in a joyous cacophony. Dane pulled Kylara close, his heart too full for words. In that moment, he knew that they could face anything, overcome any obstacle, as long as they had each other. And as they stood there, bathed in the warmth of Solarian sunlight and the love of their families, Dane couldn't help but marvel at the twists of fate that had brought them together. A chance collision, a steamy sauna, a love that had crossed the stars themselves. Together they would build a future brighter than either of them had ever dared to dream. A future of unity, of understanding, of endless possibilities. A future forged in the heat of the sauna and tempered by the unbreakable bond of their love. Dane stood before the Galactic Council, his heart pounding in his chest as he faced the stern gazes of the assembled diplomats. He had known on some level that his impulsive trip to Cellar would have consequences, but he had never imagined anything like this. Ambassador Ryder, the Brogaxian counselor began, his voice dripping with disdain. You stand accused of dereliction of duty, of abandoning your post at a critical juncture in these negotiations. What do you have to say for yourself? Dane took a deep breath, his mind racing as he tried to find the right words. He knew that his actions looked bad, that he had put his personal desires above his professional obligations. But how could he make them understand? How could he explain the depth of his love for Kylara, the soul-deep connection that had driven him to cross the stars themselves just to be by her side? Counselors, he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. I know that my actions were impulsive, that I should have followed proper protocol, but I ask you to consider the context in which those actions were taken. He paused, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the mix of curiosity and hostility on the faces before him. For months, I have worked tirelessly to build bridges between our peoples, to forge a new era of cooperation and understanding. And at the heart of that effort has been my relationship with Ambassador Kylara of Cellar. A murmur ran through the room, some diplomats nodding in recognition, others frowning in disapproval. Dane pressed on, his voice growing stronger with each word. What began as a chance encounter in a sauna has blossomed into something deeper, something more profound than I ever could have imagined. Through Kylara, I have come to understand the Solarian people, their hopes and dreams, their fears and aspirations. And through me, she has gained a new perspective on humanity, on the boundless potential that lies within us. He took a step forward, his gaze locking with the Brogaxian counselors. When Kylara was called back to Cellar to tend to her ailing father, I knew that I could not simply stand by and wait for her return. I needed to be there for her, to support her in her time of need. And so yes, I made a decision. A decision to put love above duty, to follow my heart rather than the rules of bureaucracy. The room was silent now, every eye fixed on Dane as he spoke. He could feel the weight of their judgment, the uncertainty and skepticism that hung in the air, but he could also sense a glimmer of something else, a flicker of understanding, of empathy. I know that my actions have caused concern, even anger among some of you, and for that, I am truly sorry. But I ask you to consider this. If we are to build a true and lasting peace between our peoples, we must be willing to take risks, to step outside our comfort zones, to challenge our preconceptions, to open our hearts and minds to new possibilities, new ways of being. He spread his hands, his voice ringing out clear and strong. That is what Kylara and I have done. We have dared to imagine a future where humans and Solarians stand side by side, not as rivals or adversaries, but as partners, as friends, as family. A gasp ran through the room, a ripple of shock and amazement. Dane could see the wheels turning in their minds, the dawning realization of what he was suggesting. "Yes," he said softly, his eyes shining with conviction. "Kylara and I are more than just colleagues, more than just lovers. We are a symbol of what is possible, of the bridges that can be built when we dare to reach across the stars. And I believe with all my heart that our union is not a distraction from the work of peace, but a vital part of it." He turned to face the council once more, his shoulders squared, his head held high. "And so, counselors, I ask for your understanding, your forgiveness, and your blessing. Not just for myself and Kylara, but for the future we are trying to build. A future of unity, of cooperation, of endless possibilities." For a long moment there was silence. Then, slowly, a single diplomat began to clap. Then another, and another, until the entire chamber was filled with the sound of applause, a thunderous ovation that shook the very walls. Dane felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see Kylara standing beside him, her eyes shining with tears of pride and joy. "You did it, my love," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "You won them over." He pulled her close, his heart too full for words. In that moment, he knew that they had crossed a threshold, that the path ahead would not be easy, but that they would walk it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. As the applause died down, the Bragaxian counselor stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Ambassador Ryder," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind, "while I cannot condone your actions, I also cannot deny the truth of your words. You have given us much to consider, much to ponder in the days ahead." He paused, his eyes flickering to Kylara, then back to Dane. "For now, let us adjourn this session, but know that your words have not fallen on deaf ears. The council will deliberate, and we will render our decision in due course." Dane nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude and relief. "Thank you, counselor. Thank you all." As the diplomats filed out of the chamber, Kylara turned to him, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You know, my love, there's one thing you forgot to mention in your little speech." Dane raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Oh, and what's that?" She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. "The sauna. The place where it all began. The steam, the heat, the passion." He laughed, his arms tightening around her waist. "How could I forget? That sauna changed my life in ways I never could have imagined." Kylara grinned, her fingers playing with the hair at the nape of his neck. "Mine too. And you know what? I think it's time we paid it another visit, for old time's sake." Dane's heart skipped a beat, a thrill of anticipation running through him. "Lead the way, Ambassador. I'm all yours." Hand in hand, they made their way through the station's winding corridors, their steps light, their hearts full of hope and promise. And as they stepped into the sauna, the steam enveloping them like a warm embrace, Dane knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For their love was more than just a fleeting passion, more than just a diplomatic gambit. It was a force of nature, a blazing star that would light the way for generations to come. And it had all begun here, in the heat and the steam, in a moment of pure, unbridled connection. A connection that would change the galaxy forever. Dane and Kylara sat in comfortable silence, the steam of the sauna enveloping them like a warm, soothing blanket. After the tumultuous events of the past few days, Dane's impulsive trip to Cellar, his impassioned speech before the Galactic Council, the looming uncertainty of their future, it felt good to simply be together, to bask in the quiet intimacy of the moment. Kylara's head rested on Dane's shoulder, her blue skin glistening with a sheen of sweat. Dane's arm was wrapped around her waist, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her hip. They had shed their formal attire, opting for the simple white robes provided by the sauna attendants. In this space, they were not ambassadors or diplomats, but simply two people in love, savoring the precious time they had together. The hiss of the steam and the gentle hum of the sauna's machinery were the only sounds, a soothing backdrop to their companionable silence. Dane felt a sense of deep contentment, a feeling of rightness that suffused his entire being. Here, with Kylara in his arms, he was exactly where he was meant to be. Suddenly, the peace was shattered by the sound of the sauna door opening. Dane and Kylara sat up, startled, as a figure stepped through the steam. It was the Bragaxian counselor, his purple skin flushed from the heat, his expression unreadable. "Counselor," Dane said, rising to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. "What brings you here?" The Brigaxian held up a hand, his eyes flickering between Dane and Kylara. "Peace, Ambassador. I come not to judge, but to understand." He stepped further into the sauna, the steam parting around him like a curtain. "I have been thinking a great deal about your words, Ambassador Ryder, about the power of connection, of reaching across the stars to forge new bonds of understanding." Dane nodded, a flicker of hope kindling in his chest. "I'm glad to hear that, Counselor. I truly believe that our peoples have much to learn from each other, much to gain from closer ties." The Brigaxian's gaze shifted to Kylara, his expression softening. "And you, Ambassador Kylara, your courage and dedication have not gone unnoticed. To leave your world, your people, to forge a new path, it is a brave and noble thing." Kylara inclined her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Thank you, Counselor. But in truth, it is Dane who has shown me the way. His love, his unwavering belief in the possibility of a better future, it has given me strength I never knew I had." The Brigaxian nodded, his eyes distant, as if seeing something far away. "Love, it is a strange and powerful force, is it not? It has the power to bridge gaps, to heal wounds, to change the very course of history." He focused on Dane once more, his gaze sharp and penetrating. "Tell me, Ambassador, what is it about this sauna that so captivates your people? Why do you seek out the heat, the steam, the sweat?" Dane considered the question, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's hard to put into words, Counselor. There's something about the sauna that just strips away all the barriers, all the pretenses. In the heat and the steam, we are all just human, vulnerable, open, real." He glanced at Kylara, his eyes soft with affection. "It's a place of connection, of intimacy, a place where we can let down our guards and simply be." The Brigaxian was silent for a long moment, his expression contemplative. Then slowly he began to disrobe, folding his garments neatly and setting them aside. Dane and Kylara watched, eyes wide, as the counselor settled onto the bench beside them, his skin glistening in the steam. For a moment, no one spoke, the only sound the hiss of the steam and the pounding of their hearts. Then the Brigaxian spoke, his voice soft and thoughtful. "I begin to understand, I think, the appeal of this vulnerability, this openness." He turned to Dane, his eyes glinting with a new respect. "You humans are a strange and wondrous species, Ambassador. You seek out discomfort, embrace it, find strength and connection in it. It is a trait that I have often found puzzling, even foolish. But now I begin to see the wisdom in it." Dane felt a rush of gratitude, a sense of profound understanding. "Thank you, Counselor. That means more than you know." The Brigaxian waved a dismissive hand, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Think nothing of it, Ambassador. In truth, it is I who should be thanking you, for opening my eyes, for challenging my preconceptions." He leaned back, his eyes drifting closed as he savored the heat. "And who knows? Perhaps this is just the beginning. Perhaps in time, more of my people will come to see the value in this human way of being." Kylara laughed, the sound bright and joyous in the close confines of the sauna. "Can you imagine, my love? Brigaxians lining up to sweat it out in the steam? The galaxy truly is changing." Dane grinned, his heart swelling with a fierce, unbridled hope. "And we're just getting started, my star. There's so much more to explore, so many more bridges to build." The Brigaxian opened one eye, his expression wry. "Just promise me one thing, ambassadors." Dane and Kylara exchanged a glance, their eyebrows raised in question. "Next time you decide to change the course of galactic history, give me a little warning first. I'm not as young as I used to be, and these surprises are hell on the heart." They all laughed at that, the sound echoing off the sauna walls, a moment of pure, unbridled joy. And in that laughter, Dane felt the last of his fears and doubts melt away, replaced by a bone-deep certainty. They had done it. Against all odds, they had forged a bond that would change the galaxy forever. A bond of love, of understanding, of shared humanity. No matter the color of their skin or the world of their birth, and it had all begun here, in the heat and the steam, in a moment of pure, unbridled connection. As Dane pulled Kylara close, their lips meeting in a soft, sweet kiss, He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For they had something stronger than fear, stronger than hate, stronger than any force in the universe. They had love. And in the end, that was all that mattered.